At the beginning of the war, the Russian Federation transferred about 2,000 tracked howitzers to Ukraine, and over the 34 months of the war, the occupiers lost at least 800 of them. As Forbes writes, the production of new howitzers is currently lagging significantly behind demand. The once huge stockpiles of old howitzers from the Soviet era have been reduced, perhaps by half. Against the backdrop of a shortage of mobile artillery in the Russian Federation, North Korea has handed over its howitzers to the occupiers for the second time in 6 weeks. They were spotted moving by train. The publication notes that this does not so much demonstrate close relations between the countries as it shows the dependence of the Russians on North Korean weapons. As is known, the M1989 howitzers fire 170mm shells, which is an unusual caliber. As Estonian analyst Artur Rehi explains, most Russian guns fire 122mm or 152mm shells. North Korea has sent potentially millions of these shells to Russia so that the invaders could potentially fire more than 10,000 shots a day. Until this winter, North Korea supplied artillery ammunition of the calibers that Russia can produce itself. It is indicated that the Russians' problem was production capacity, not ability. That is, if Pyongyang turns its back on Moscow, the Russians will not lose artillery, they will just use it less often. Now, with the arrival of the M1989, the situation is changing. This self-propelled gun is the only 170mm howitzer in the world. Therefore, it is quite possible that all the factories that produce shells for it are located in North Korea. This further deepens Russia's dependence. More than a year ago, Ukrainian analytical group Frontelligence Insight reported on the first million North Korean shells that had arrived in Russia. The question then arose as to what exactly the DPRK had received in return. Moscow is likely to transfer missile and submarine technology to Pyongyang, potentially accelerating the North Korean Navy's long-term efforts to develop and deploy quite quiet submarines armed with nuclear weapons or intercontinental ballistic missiles, according to U.S. Navy Admiral Samuel Paparo, head of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. It's a one-sided trade that largely favors the North Koreans. The Russians get artillery. The North Koreans could get underwater nuclear weapons. But what choice does Russia have as its depleted artillery core becomes increasingly North Korean? If Pyongyang doesn't get what it wants, it could effectively turn off an increasing share of Moscow's biggest weapons, the publication concluded.
Vietnam is hosting a defense expo that brings together some 250 exhibitors, including geopolitical rivals, including the US, China, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and Iran. US exhibitors include Boeing and Textron Aviation. China is present with Norinco and Gaudu International Trade. Iran's Defense Ministry Pavilion isn't far from booths set up by Israeli companies Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries. A number of Russian firms, along with Ukraine's Motor Sich, are also in attendance. Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh called the event a message of peace, cooperation and development. Vietnam has been trying to increase its domestic arms manufacturing while reducing its reliance on Russia for weapon imports. In 2022, Russia made up around 60% of all of Vietnam's military purchases, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. But Vietnam's long-standing efforts to diversify its imports have been accelerated by the war in Ukraine. It has also been trying to boost its own capacity to manufacture arms and display locally produced military equipment at the expo. Escalating tensions in the South China Sea, a key trade and security route, is a key issue for Vietnam. Vietnam has been critical of China's increasingly hostile actions in the disputed waters. Vietnam and other Southeast Asian countries have overlapping claims in the busy sea passage. The expo, held at Hanoi's Gia Lam Airport, continues through Sunday.
Hôm nay tôi rất vui mừng cùng quý vị tham dự triển lãm quốc phòng với thông điệp hòa bình, hợp tác, cùng phát triển, góp phần thúc đẩy đối ngoại và hợp tác quốc phòng trên tất cả các lĩnh vực vì hòa bình, ổn định, hợp tác và phát triển ở khu vực và trên thế giới.
In this region, currently is one of the main concerns of all the armed forces in the region. How to collect the information from the South China Sea, how to analyze this information, and how to pick up exactly what are the right concerns that you need to deal with them later. And developing those kind of systems, integrating AI technology as well, and all other kinds of analyzing the information will actually benefit, our partners in the region.
đẹp này. Qua bên quay được.